Right now, I want you to just take a second and assess your own physical comfort. Imagine you're shivering, wrapped up in a massive sweater. Just take a look around and truly evaluate your environment.
How does the chair you're sitting in actually feel? Are you too hot? Too cold? Just kind of uncomfortable? Now, if you're a guy, these questions might seem totally random. You just exist in the space, right? But here's the problem. For women, these questions land very differently. That's because women have been heavily conditioned to just accept their discomfort. They're taught to treat the environments and systems around them as normal, often without realizing that these spaces don't actually fit them at all. They just figure out how to work around them.
Think about this extremely relatable example. How many women out there carry a giant tote bag or purse specifically so they have enough room to stuff an extra sweater or blanket inside? Why? Because they fully expect to be absolutely freezing at the office today. That right there is the collective frustration of millions of women who have just accepted that being uncomfortably cold at work is just normal.
But this is where it gets interesting and honestly pretty shocking. The reality is our environments, from the chairs we sit in to the building temperatures, even car safety features, were literally designed for men. They actively work against women in these highly subtle, microscopic ways every single day because, well, they were simply never built for them in the first place.
Section 1. The Standard Man Myth. To really understand why this happens, we have to look back at the historical concept that dictated exactly how everything around us was measured and built.
Going all the way back to Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, right up to the mid-20th century concept of the Standard Man, we've exclusively used men's bodies to measure what feels normal and appropriate in our world. We took those specific male measurements and literally built everything around them. Meanwhile, everyone else, women, women of color, women with disabilities, have for decades been completely left out, unseen, unmeasured, and completely unvalued in the design process.
But here's where it gets crazy. You might think this is ancient history, right? Nope. It was only in 1991 that women were finally required to be included in medical trials. 1991! And it was just about 20 years ago that we started using female crash test dummies in car safety tests. Before that, cars were tested exclusively to protect the standard man.
Our source material puts it absolutely perfectly. It is as if we only recently realized that women are not men. I mean, it really highlights the total absurdity of this historical blind spot, doesn't it? It is a massive oversight that completely dictates our physical reality today.
Section 2. Fixing the workplace. So what if we actually changed the rules? Let's look at what happens when you intentionally explore a female-focused workplace redesign in this explainer.
When researchers finally asked women what wasn't working, they found these incredibly practical, everyday micro-struggles. So, they completely redesigned an office space. First, they noticed office parking spots are usually way too narrow to fully open a door and pull out a bulky infant car seat. The fix? They built wider parking spaces. Next, they realized heavy commercial doors are quite literally designed for male upper body strength, so they installed lighter office doors. They also stopped pretending workers are these 100% independent agents whose kids just magically raise themselves, and they added on-site partner-run childcare. And, because research showed women prefer attending professional development events with peers, they made all learning environments highly social.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when you design for everyone. The results were absolutely glorious. When women actually felt valued and physically comfortable, they naturally collaborated across companies. They openly shared resources. They reclaimed words that usually get criticized when applied to women, words like capital and ambition, and they discussed them without an ounce of shame. They finally got to just be themselves.
Section 3. The trillion-dollar solution. Look, valuing women as human beings is really the only argument we should ever need for inclusive design. But most people don't realize there's an absolutely massive economic argument here too.
Today, there are far more men in the workforce than women. In fact, female workforce participation is currently stuck at the exact same level it was 30 years ago. Think about that. 3 decades of zero upward movement, and that gap is only widening because our workplaces are actively pushing women out.
But what if we fixed it? Building workplaces where women actually feel comfortable and valued is the ultimate key to breaking the stagnation. Because if women worked at the exact same levels as men, the United States' gross domestic product would immediately jump by 5%.
So, the crucial takeaway is this exploding massive number.
That 5% jump equates to a $1 trillion economic boost. $1 trillion. And that's just by designing environments that actually accommodate half the population.
Section 4, redesigning our cities. Now let's see how this builds from the micro level of the office all the way up to the macro level of entire societies.
To really answer that, we have to look at a pretty shocking statistic. Get this. 94% of U.S. cities have formal city plans outlining their design and infrastructure, but only 2% of those plans include any mention of women whatsoever. 2%! Women are completely off the radar of city builders, which means their distinct everyday experiences are just being entirely ignored.
And what exactly is that distinct experience? Well, it's caregiving. Women spend 37% more time on daily domestic or caregiving activities than men do. And it's not just young kids. The average elder caregiver is a 49-year-old woman who already works full-time outside the home. Plus, she does an additional 20 hours a week providing care. Yet most downtowns are complete childcare deserts. Public transit systems are entirely hostile to strollers, and they absolutely do not accommodate the short, frequent multi-stop trips that women running caregiving errands actually have to make.
So what does a city actually look like if we acknowledge that reality? Let's walk through this step-by-step transformation of an empowered working mother. Step 1. She walks to a nearby transit hub and connects with other parents. Step 2. She takes transit to her office building and drops her toddler at the company-sponsored on-site daycare. Step 3. She actually gets to network with a VP at her company simply because he's dropping his kids off at that exact same daycare. And Step 4. After work, she heads back to the transit hub, which is cleverly designed as a service center. She easily gets a flu shot at a walk-in clinic, stops at a bank that is actually open after 5 p.m., and sets up an account that doesn't penalize her with higher interest rates just for being a woman.
Now, as our source material points out, thinking about a stress-free, highly efficient day like this feels almost as mythical and surreal as riding a flying pony when you're 8 years old. But it really doesn't have to be. Questioning what we just accept as normal gives us this massive, innovative opportunity. Why make it so insanely difficult for working mothers when their specific contributions literally fuel the future success of our economies?
Section 5, the final mindset shift. So how do we actually get there? What does it take to make these changes a reality?
The answer is surprisingly simple. We have to value women. Not just as human beings worthy of basic consideration, but as people making amazing, vital contributions to our collective success. We have to understand that while women's experiences are different from men's, those differences are absolutely not shortcomings. They are real-world realities that need to be actively supported.
When you look at the whole picture, you realize this isn't a sad story at all. It's actually a massive triumph. Women are succeeding in personal, political, cultural, and economic spheres completely despite the physical systems around them. The world fights them every single step of the way, and they are still winning. But just imagine what women could do if we actually made things easier for them. Which brings us to our final thought. We don't have to settle for a world that is just a modified version of what works for men. We can build places, cities, and systems born from genuine, inclusive thought and creativity. So ask yourself, what incredible things could we build if we finally stopped using outdated defaults and actually designed the world for everyone?